Hello, children. Today we're going to learn about Rabindranath Tagore's Freedom, the poem from Module 1 of Zeitgeist. Welcome to the class. You can't cross the sea merely by standing and staring at the water, quoted the poet, philosopher, musician, writer, and educationist Rabindranath Tagore. He was the first Asian to become the Nobel laureate, and he won the Nobel Prize for Literature for his collection of poems Gitanjali in the year 1913. He was popularly called as Gurudev, and we knew he was an icon of Indian culture. His songs were popularly known as Rabindra Sangeet, and two songs from his Rabindra Sangeet are the national anthems of India and Bangladesh, the Janagana Mana and the Amar Shonar Bangla of Bangladesh. And towards his biography, we can say he was born in the year 1861 at Calcutta on 7th of May. He had his initial education in Oriental Seminary School, but he did not like the conventional education and started studying at home under several teachers. At the age of 16, he released his first substantial poems under the pseudonym Bhanu Simha. And he went to England in the year 1878 to become a barrister to study law. And he came back and he participated in the national freedom struggle also, but in his own unconventional way. And he spent most of his life at Shanti Niketan. In 1915, he was knighted by the British King George V. And in 1919, following the Jallianwala Bagh massacre and also against the imperial policies of British in India, he renounced his knighthood. He was a supporter of Gandhiji, but he stayed out of politics. And Tagore opposed to nationalism and militarism as a matter of his principles, but Tagore promoted spiritual values. And he also promoted the creation of a new world culture. What is this new world culture? That new world culture that is based on multiculturalism, diversity, and tolerance. But he was unable to gain ideological support to his views, and he retired into a relative solitude or being alone. And his role in Indian education cannot be forgotten. He is the founder of Vishwa Bharati University in West Bengal. And he also experimented with the village Swaraj or self rule. And it was his alternative to the Western modernization. Tagore is referred to as the Bard of Bengal, and his major poetry collections are a Manasi, or the mental images or the mind's creation, which was published in the year 1890, and Sonar Turi, that is a collection of Bengali poetry, which is translated as the Golden Boat. It consisted of more than 40 poems. And in 1912, Gitanjali was published, collection of 103 poems, and he translated it from Bengali to English. And 1914, Geetimalya was published, and 1916, Balagha, another poetry collection, was published. Please take page number 25, the last paragraph. According to Tagore, freedom was not just political in nature, but he wants that freedom is a kind of liberation of people from all the shackles or from all the chains of oppressive conventions, beliefs, and all. People should be free from all the oppressive beliefs and conventions. And the real freedom, he says that it should be the freedom from all religious oppressions, political oppressions, moral oppressions, and intellectual oppressions. And he wishes the people to be united in their struggle for the freedom, and people should unite to reach the high state of freedom, can be the freedom from the British rule, and people should overcome the narrow problems inside their place, that is the small problems, because a big problem of British imperialism is there. So people should avoid the small things, small domestic strives and all, and people should be get have to reach the high state of freedom by destroying all the barriers of caste and creed. Any and this poem freedom, it is a poem which attempts to state that what it actually means to be free during the time of this colonial rule. And the poem assumes, now we can say, we are in this neoliberal time, or extremely modernist era, postmodern era. Here, the poem has different significance. That earlier it was a significance of the freedom from the British colonial rule, and now we can say the freedom from what all things that we have around now. You have to connect it with the present situation. Now we are undergoing the fear of the virus, right? So now what freedom that we need right now? We need the freedom to breathe, right? We need the freedom to be in a safe zone. That is what the freedom now we assume. Yes, and now we will move on to the poem. uh, Freedom, it is a liberation of the human spirit, freedom from oppression and slavery. And really, we know this is a patriotic poem. And the poet asked the people of India to be united in their struggle to reach the highest state of freedom. And coming in towards the first line, freedom from fear is the freedom I claim for you, my motherland. See, here he refers motherland, India as motherland, a woman, a motherland. And he wants India to be free from fear, a sense of insecurity. He wants people to get free from freedom from the fear, the feel of insecurity. Freedom from the burden of the ages, bending your head, breaking your back, blinding your eyes to the beckoning call of the future. The word freedom is repeated throughout the poem. The first line, freedom from fear is the freedom I claim for your motherland. First sound is repeated, right? Repetition of first sound you can see, and it shows the urgency in the poet's call for freedom. And towards the third line, B sound is repeated. Burden, bend, break, back, blind, beckon. B sound is repeated. And you can see in the third line, freedom from the burden of the ages. What does this burden of the ages means? It is burden of the British rule. Britishers came to India in the 15th century and they established their trade. We know that. And the East India Company ruled till 19th century towards the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857, and the British rule, British Raj succeeded over Indian subcontinent from 1858, and they succeeded it from East India Company, and it cost the Sepoy Mutiny in 1857 caused British to reconsider the structure of governance in India. They saw the powerlessness of Indians. They were under constant fear, and they couldn't determine their own future without the consent of British. They were in insecurity. They felt insecurity, and this powerlessness of Indians actually helped British also to impose their direct rule. And here we can say, due to the burden of the ages of these centuries of colonial era, Indians actually, or the country, bent her head and break her back, bent her head. That is, they were submissive to the Britishers, breaking their back. So much of hard work they were doing, and because they are doing as per the instructions of these people, these imperial people, and they were actually like slaves, bending their head, breaking their back. They're actually slaves to the British rule, and it blinded their eyes. They couldn't see the bright call of the future. They couldn't see the invitation to the bright future, charm of the future. They couldn't see that because their eyes were blinded because of the burden of the ages. And the Tagore, as wanted his country, the freedom for the motherland, as everybody wants, right? A freedom for us on country. In the line "Freedom from the Burden of the Ages", the poet has actually personified India to an image of an old woman. The poet is actually disheartened as people have lost their hope in a bright future of independence. They became blind, or they became ignorant towards the invitation towards the independence, invitation towards the future. And people were submissive to Britishers. They were doing all sorts of jobs to Britishers as per their instruction, and they were feared to question the rulers. They themselves felt inferior to the imperial nature of colonials, and they were feared to question the rulers. They just forgot, or they couldn't proclaim in a loud voice. They had a civilization of 4,000 years of civilization. They couldn't actually put in front of them because they were under constant fear. And you can see in the pictures of the colonial times and how they were treated, and we have all studied in the school time, but still, to remind you about these things, I've added the pictures too. You can see in the picture like how the people of India, how they were treated, not just in India, we can say in everywhere in the world. British had their empires, right? And people were working as slaves to them, and everywhere the situation would remained the same itself. They were the people of that country were forced to work for the Britishers. And yes, freedom from the burden of the ages, bending your head, the image of an old woman breaking your back, doing all sorts of hard work, the image of image of a woman again, and blinding your eyes to the beckoning, to the beckoning call of the future. Freedom from the shackles of slumber, wherewith you fasten yourself in night stillness, mistrusting the star that speaks of truth's adventurous paths. And here the poet is asking the people to get freedom from the shackles of slumber. That is, the rule actually started, British rule started quite a long time ago, and this made the people to become less active in the sense they were passive to the rule. They were less active against the British rule. They were just obeying all the commands of the Britishers. So the Indians were tied themselves to the darkness of the colonial time. See, night's stillness is used here. Night denotes the dark colonial time. In that darkness of night, in the stillness of the night, that stillness means there is no development, a stagnant state of night, people of being inactive, a passive mode. People are just obeying all the commands from Britishers. They couldn't fight back, they couldn't raise their voice. At that time, is really criticizing the people for becoming inactive, because only if a few people were against the colonial rule, or people are against the colonial rule, only a few people is ready to fight against the colonial rule, and people in the darkness of night, they could see in that stagnant time, in that inactiveness of time, they could see the stars that speak of truth's adventurous path. And these stars can be the leaders of the freedom struggle. I've put the picture here. See the pictures of the freedom fighters of India. And the people at that point of time, many people were mistrusting these stars of freedom struggle. And these guiding stars actually were guiding us towards the independence or to the brightness towards the future. These people were leading us. But the people were ignorant, they were in the chain of sleep. Right, many people were ignorant. That means they were obeying the Britishers, obeying the British rule. They couldn't actually raise their voice. But the freedom, attaining freedom, was not so easy. That was in the adventurous parts. Many freedom fighters, people were into the different movements like Swadeshi, Satyagraha movements, Khilafat movements, non-cooperation movements, civil disobedience movement. So, getting freedom or attaining freedom was not an easy task, right? And here the poet is criticizing the people of being in a slumber and being in the night stillness and constantly disbelieving in the star that ask them to come towards the brightness of independence. Coming towards the next sentence. Freedom from the anarchy of destiny, whose sails are weakly yielded to the blind uncertain winds, and the hem to a hand ever rigid and cold as death. Now the poet wants the country to get freedom from the anarchy of destiny. He has already said that our inactivity will lead us to darkness only. And he is asking us not to follow the blind destiny or follow blindly our destiny. We need to do our part also. And here we can see the India is compared to a sailboat that follows an uncertain wind. He has used a metaphor of boat here that follows uncertain winds, because our country, Indians, have no idea where they were going to at that point of time. And here he has also said that captain of the boat and the hem, who is captain, controls the hem, captain controls the boat. It's like a dead man, and his hands are like rigid and cold as death and doesn't know where to take us. Maybe it can be a criticism against the leaders or the people itself, who at a point of time allowed to follow destiny of India without actually working for the freedom. We know people of India, or we Indians, are a little superstitious, right? We just blindly follow our destiny, and he wants a freedom from that anarchy of destiny, because blindly following the destiny will lead us to a state of disorder or confusion or lawlessness. And so he wants a freedom from the anarchy of destiny also. Freedom from the insult of dwelling in a puppet's world, where movements are started through brainless wires, repeated through mindless habits, where figures wait with patience and obedience for the master of show to be stood into a mimicry of life. Here the poet wants the people to get freedom from the insult of living in a puppet's world, being a puppet. The poet wants a freedom from being a puppet of insult, or freedom from that humiliation of being in a puppet's world. Like puppets are controlled, Indians were also controlled by the imperial rule. The actions of Indians at that point of time were thoughtless, like puppets, and their unreal life, like puppets, were controlled by the colonial rulers. And he wants the people to get freedom from that insult of being like a puppet. Like Indians should get free from that insult or humiliation. India is controlled by the foreign power, and people have to just blindly obey what they say, and they take their wealth and profit and expand their empire. And the brainless wire here, it can be used the strings that used to control the puppet's movement, the instructions of the colonial people. and they are repeating the mindless habit, like puppets are repeating the instructions. People are also, Indians are also repeating that their instructions, or obeying their instructions. And the people, they can't express their emotions. Whatever be the situation, Indians, whatever be the situations, they have to act as a puppet and need to obey the masters blindly, have to follow the masters blindly. And puppets wait for the next movement from the masters. Like that, puppets obedience for the masters. Indians also wait to obey the colonial masters, or Indians obedience to colonial masters also make them to remain a slave forever, or to a point of time. And Indians to imitate what Britishers asked them to do. The Britishers wanted Indians to imitate, because they considered our civilization, our manner of living, were not good, and they considered we as Indians were inferior to the Britishers. And Rudyard Kipling, a poet, also said that it is the white man's burden to civilize the world. That is what their attitude was. So the poet wants a freedom from that insult or humiliation of being in a puppet's world. So the poet asks the people to get freedom from fear, that is a feeling of insecurity, a freedom from burden of ages, that is to being slavery, to being a slave to colonial rule that actually made them submissive and obedient always. And he wants a freedom from the shackles of slumber, that is chain of passiveness, becoming less active. And that inactiveness made Indians to mistrust the freedom struggle actually. And he also wants the freedom from the anarchy of destiny, that is blindly following the fate. And he wants and then blindly following the fate actually made people to unable to fight back against the colonial rule. And he wants a freedom from insult of being a puppet. That as puppet, here he has used a metaphor also, right? Puppet's world, that is a foolish life, Indians foolish life of obeying the Britishers. So he wants a freedom from that also. Blindly obeying the Britishers means a sort of mimicry, a sort of imitating them. So he wants to get a freedom from that too. So here we can see freedom is actually a universal theme, is not just for the of the freedom struggle. Freedom is actually can be seen as a universal theme, right? A freedom from all sorts of oppression, as we discussed in the introductory part. So that is about all about our poem Freedom. You have to understand about the different types of freedom he wants, that like freedom from fear, freedom from burden of ages, from shackles of slumber and arc of destiny, instead of being a puppet. And you have to keep in mind that he has also personified India as an old lady, the alliterating sounds, F and B, and the metaphors he has used, night as a metaphor, that is dark side of British rule. And he has also used India like a boat. Then puppets world he has used. Then we can see a theme of patriotism also in the poem, because he such a love for the country. That's why he's asking the people to rise against all these things, right? Rise against the atrocities of the colonial rule. So we could see the images of colonialism very well in the poem. About his patriotic spirit we can see. Then his concept of freedom is also elaborated in the poem. So I hope you got a clear picture of the work Freedom now, and we will meet with yet another session next time. Thank you.